Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to get this makeup look using products and techniques that are suitable for dry skin. So there are a couple of techniques that will make it harder for dry skin to peep through throughout the day, and there are other products that are more suited towards dry skin. So if you guys want to see how to get this makeup look and learn those kind of techniques and tips, then just keep on watching. So it might not really look like I have super dry skin, but my skin is actually pretty dehydrated because I'm using like a benzoyl peroxide face wash, which is really drying. So once I put foundation and powder and stuff on top of my skin, especially around my mouth, it gets really dry looking and can sort of flake up, and I just don't really like that. So this is my dry skin makeup routine. I start out with a moisturizer. I'm using this Embryolisse Lait Cream Concentrate, and I'm gonna start by putting this on like my forehead and my nose and cheeks and mouth area, just to get some hydration into my skin. So next I might put on foundation or something like that, but for this tutorial I'm not going to do that because when my skin is feeling really dry, I like to just skip foundation altogether. And if you can do that, I would suggest doing that too, because just putting more products on your skin is just going to make your skin look even more dry if you're suffering from dryness. So what I'm going to do is just put concealer on the places where I want it, so just right underneath my eyes and on any acne marks and stuff like that. And I'm also going to put a little bit of color corrector right in the very inner corner of my eye to counteract some of the dark circles there. So I'm using this Pixi Correction Concentrate in Awakening Apricot, and I'm just going to take that on my finger and put that right in the very inner corner. For concealer, I'm going to be using this Catrice Camouflage concealer. This one is one of the least drying concealers from the drugstore that I found, but it's not lacking coverage. So this is a very high coverage concealer that actually is pretty hydrating on my under eyes. So I'm going to put that right under my eyes and then where else I need to have it. So there is all the complexion products that I wanted to do. If you feel like you have a lot of acne and you can't go without wearing a foundation, then go ahead and use that. Something that I like that's pretty hydrating is the Physicians Formula The Healthy Foundation. This one is pretty hydrating, but still, if you are suffering from a lot of dry skin, it can still exacerbate some of that a little bit, so I would still be wary of that and try to just go with concealer if you can. So since we didn't put any foundation on the rest of our skin, it's going to be kind of hard to blend any other products on, like bronzer, blush, or highlight or anything like that. So to do that, I'm going to lay down some powder first, and this is a really good powder that I like a lot for days when my skin is feeling really dry, because it's a very thin texture and it's actually not as drying as you might think that it would be. The heavier that a powder is, the more drying it's going to be. For example, the Maybelline Fit Me Loose powder, that one is very thick and heavy feeling, so it's going to exacerbate some of that dryness that you might have. So this is one that I really like, and I'm using the shade Naturally Neutral, and I'm just going to take a little bit of that comes off in the cap and use a really fluffy powder brush and just tap it in. And after I tap off the excess, I'm just going to pat this on my forehead and along my cheeks. On my nose and around my nose, like right in this crevice, is where I tend to get a lot of dry skin, so I'm just avoiding that area completely and just putting powder around where I'm going to be putting my bronzer. So you can use powder if you have dry skin. Just remember to use a powder that's very thin in texture and that you build up in fine layers. So just take a little bit on like a fluffy brush, tap it off, and then just pat it where you need it. And you can build it up in layers like that, but going in with a heavier powder is going to make your dry skin look worse, whereas going in with something like this, you can still wear powder even though you have dry skin. My next step is going to be highlighter, which is completely optional, but it's something that I really like because it makes your skin look a little bit healthier and it can kind of distract from any dry skin that you have going on. So I'm just going to take this Ofra highlighter and this Milani highlighting brush and just hit the tops of my cheekbones and right along my nose, as well as right between my eyebrows right here, and then on my chin, because those areas, just putting a little bit of highlighter can make the areas where you have dry skin less noticeable. So no matter what your skin type is, I always would suggest doing your highlighter first before doing bronzer or blush or anything like that, because putting those products on second can help it blend in a little bit better and make it look more natural. So now I'm going to go in with bronzer. This is the Maybelline City Bronzer in the shade 200. And I'm going to take this on a brush that's shaped like this. It's sort of like flatter on top with just a little bit of a dome, and it's pretty densely packed. So I'm just going to tap it into the bronzer. And then when I'm putting it on my forehead and on my cheeks, instead of buffing it on like this, I'm going to just pat it on, and that will stop you from disturbing any dry skin that you might have, and it will prevent it from flaking up. Another option for you if you have dry skin is to just skip powders completely. So you can skip adding powder on this area where you're going to put bronzer and just go in with a cream bronzer. So this is what I like to use. It's the Maybelline Fit Me Shine Free foundation stick, and it's in the shade 330 Toffee. This one is just a really good bronzer sort of contour shade for me, and I just put it on the areas where I normally put bronzer and then just blend it in with a beauty blender or with like a stippling brush or something like that. And a cream highlight that I really like is this Colourpop Lunch Money highlighter. And I also like the Eddie Funkhouser Glow Drops. These are both two really good cream or liquid type of highlighters that you can use if your skin is really dry and you just don't want to put any powders on it. For blush, you can pretty much use anything that you like, but if you're really wary of using powders, you can use the like Glossier Cloud Paints or something like that. Those are really easy to use. You just use a little stippling brush and you just buff it into your cheeks. But what I'm going to use is a powder blush, which is the Wet n Wild Color Icon Blush in Mellow Wine, and I'm going to take that on a little powder brush like this and then just stipple that on my cheeks, and I'm going to focus it on the front part of my cheeks rather than putting it along my contour highlight area. I'm just going to put it on the very apples of my cheeks. And it's important to remember that putting on highlighter, bronzer, blush, and everything like that isn't really necessary. If you just like one of them, you can just pick one. It's something that I really like because it sort of distracts from any dry skin that you might have. So for me, my problem area is right next to my nose, my little nose folds right here. And putting on blush and bronzer, I just feel like it takes away attention from that area. Next, I'm going to be doing my brows, but it's the same deal. It doesn't really matter what you do for this. It's up to you completely. But I just like to do this because I feel like it makes my makeup look more complete. Now that my face is done, I'm just going to go over my whole face with a dampened sponge. Using a sponge like this just really helps everything meld into the skin, and I think that's what makes dry skin look less noticeable. Next, I'm going to be doing my eyeshadow, but I wanted to mention really quickly that sometimes eye primers can be really drying on your eyelids if you're somebody who's prone to getting dry skin and things like that. So instead of using eye primer, I tend to use something like concealer, and then I'll set it with powder. And that tends to be a lot less drying because it's more of like a thick layer of cream product than just like a really thin layer of like drying product. So what I'm going to be using is the same concealer I used before, the Catrice Liquid Camouflage Concealer, and I'm just going to put that on my eyelids and then blend it out and then just set it with that same powder that I used earlier. And I'm just using that same powder, but I'm using it on a slightly smaller brush. And I'm going to be using these Colourpop and Makeup Geek single shadows just to lay down a transition. The one that I'm going to be starting out with is the Makeup Geek shadow in Desert Sands. And I'm going to pop that into my crease with a really fluffy brush. And I'm going to build up the outer corner with this Makeup Geek shadow in Tiki using a larger pointed pencil brush. I could make this a little bit of a darker look by adding black in the outer corner or something like that, but I just want to keep it really light. So that's all that I'm going to do for my transition outer corner type of shades. And so next I'm going to go into the Saharan palette by Juvia's Place. And I'm going to pick up the shade Lulu, which is this one right here, on my finger and just place that all over the eyelid. For the inner corner, I'm going to mix this white shade and the shade Zoya right here, just to make a more toned down version of that, and I'm going to place that in my very inner corner using my pinky finger. And for my lower lash line, I'm going to take that same pencil brush that I was using, and I'm going to take the shade Senegal right here and place that right on my lower lash line. Now I'm going to do a ton of mascara with the NYX Worth the Hype mascara. And for lips, I'm going to use the Cosmetics liquid lipstick in Faded Clementine. Okay, so here is the completed makeup look. It's pretty straightforward. There are just a couple of things that you guys should keep in mind. The first thing is that you should always moisturize before putting on your makeup, or use a moisturizing primer or something like that. Another thing is that you can completely avoid foundation if that's something that you feel like you can do, because a lot of the time it will just exacerbate any dry skin that you might have, and it will just make things look cakier, and it'll just be harder for it to look fresh and how you want it and stuff like that. Another tip is that you can skip eye primer and use concealer instead and set it with powder, and that will make it a little bit harder for dry skin to show through. And my last tip is that you can always go over your face with a beauty blender or a damp sponge or something like that. And also, if you have any dry spots like mine around my nose, you can just go over it with the sponge and it will just make your dry skin look less noticeable. So that is it for my dry skin makeup tutorial. I hope that you guys learned some tips and you learned about some products that might be more useful for you if you have dry skin. If you did like this video, please give it a big ol' thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more from me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.